I found myself transported back 10 years, to the day when Yvette Collins asked me for money to help her gambling-addicted father pay off his debts. Joe Smith, it's not that I, Yvette Collins, look down on you, but what can you do besides trying to blackmail me with money? I'll write you an IOU. Wait until I graduate from university, and I'll pay you back every penny. I gripped the bank card in my hand, looking at the IOU slapped down in front of me, and smiled. Yvette Collins, I don't want to lend money to a despicable person I despise. As I spoke, I glanced at Bob Wilson, standing beside Yvette Collins like an overprotective mother hen. I sneered. You could ask your dear brother to get some money for you, to pay off your old man's debts. Ding. Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. I found myself transported back 10 years, to the very day I gave money to Yvette Collins. A decade of experiences flashed before my eyes like a slideshow, scene by scene. I had loved Yvette for 10 years, pursued her for 10 years, and finally managed to marry her, just as I had always dreamed. But she had secretly drugged me, causing my heart to fail and leading to my death. Afterwards, she inherited all my assets in her capacity as my wife. Not content with sending our 3-year-old child to an orphanage, she even bribed the staff there to mistreat her. After my death, my spirit lingered, and I watched as she gritted her teeth and said to her young lover, "This little bastard is the evidence of the stain on my life. I won't rest until she's dead." Later, my daughter was abused to death, her body left to rot in a rubbish heap without anyone to claim it. I leaned against a chestnut tree next to the school and took a deep breath. How wonderful I had actually been reborn. This time, I absolutely would not love that wretched Yvette again. I wanted to see how she would repay her gambling addict father's debts and loan sharks without my financial support. I brushed the dust off my school uniform, watching the hustle and bustle inside the school. The once blurred memories of youth gradually came into focus. Yvette Collins was the daughter of our family's housekeeper. Perhaps due to Mrs. Collins' repeated praises, I had subconsciously formed a favorable impression of her. Or maybe it was just the hormones of adolescence at work. So when Yvette came to borrow money from me, I took the opportunity to suggest that she move in with us to tutor me as a way to repay the debt. In truth, I just wanted to provide Yvette with a stable and secure environment for her studies. Firstly, I could pay Yvette a monthly salary, preserving her dignity as a student from a low-income family. Secondly, I could give her a legitimate reason to move into our house, instead of squeezing into a cramped, dirty, and shabby rented flat. However, my suggestion of repaying the debt seemed to hit a nerve. She immediately jumped up, pointing at my face and yelling, "Joe Smith, I'm not your servant girl. Don't think you can humiliate me just because you have some bloody money. I'm going to university, to Cambridge. Who do you think you are?" In my previous life, she had acted the same way, but I was pathetic enough to beg her for a long time. I even thought her behavior showed a kind of noble pride. Now that I think about it, it's utterly ridiculous. After school, our family driver, Mr. Harris, came to pick me up. As I got into the car, Mr. Harris asked, "Where's Miss Collins?" I directly instructed, "Let's go, Mr. Harris. Don't wait for her. From today on, she's not allowed to set foot in our house." Mr. Harris was stunned for a moment, but seeing my grim expression, he quickly started the car. As we arrived at the front door, Yvette's mother, Mrs. Collins, came out to greet us. Seeing only me, she hurriedly asked, "Joe, didn't Yvette come back with you?" I ignored her and walked straight into the house. Mrs. Collins rushed to question driver Harris. Mr. Harris told her in a low voice that the two of us might have had an argument. Mr. Harris even advised Mrs. Collins, "Our young master's heart is all set on Miss Yvette. You should tell your daughter not to be difficult." Then I heard Mrs. Collins calling Yvette. I vaguely heard a few sentences. It seemed Mrs. Collins was complaining about Yvette being inconsiderate. I didn't listen further and went to my room to change out of my school uniform. After sitting down in the dining room, Mrs. Collins said to me with a fake smile, "Joe, don't take what Yvette did to heart. I've already talked to her." As she spoke, She stretched out her hand, palm open. I pretended not to understand and asked, "Mrs. Collins, what are you doing?" "The bank card, of course," Mrs. Collins hurriedly said. "Joe, give me the money first. I'll take it to Yvette. You know our family situation. Her father is truly useless. I've spoiled Yvette, and she doesn't know what's good for her. Don't worry, I've already scolded her. I'll make her come over to tutor you later." In my previous life, I wasn't quite clear about how bad the Collins family situation really was. I thought Yvette's father, Ambrose Collins, only owed £30,000 in gambling debts. For me, 30,000 wasn't a big number. My mum would spend more than that on a single handbag. Later, as I grew up and got involved in the family business, meeting all sorts of people, I realized that for an ordinary family, £30,000 was a huge sum. Moreover, besides the gambling debt of 30,000, Ambrose Collins also owed money to loan sharks. Now, with the interest piling up, it amounted to nearly £100,000. Ambrose Collins had no skills to speak of, apart from drinking and gambling. When he got drunk, he would even resort to domestic violence. Mrs. Collins worked as our housekeeper with a decent salary, but it wasn't enough to fill the bottomless pit of their family's debts. In my previous life, under Mrs. Collins' pressure, Yvette moved into our house. Living in our luxurious mansion, she bossed me around, treating me like her servant. Not only that, she grew to deeply resent me because of it. She said if it weren't for me, she wouldn't have become the laughing stock of her classmates. I knew that back then, her classmates all said she was my maid. Some even mocked her, saying she was my family's child bride. Because of this, she often threw tantrums at me. And I, always feeling indebted to her, allowed her to vent all her anger on me. I stared at Mrs. Collins' greedy face while slowly sipping my tea and drawled, "Mrs. Collins, I think Yvette is quite right. She's my classmate, and now that you're working in my house, it's causing her embarrassment among our peers. So, tonight you can collect your wages and leave." Mrs. Collins' mouth gaped open in disbelief. "But, Joe, I've already scolded Yvette. She'll be coming over soon." "Please don't be angry," Mrs. Collins stammered. "Mrs. Collins, you're my housekeeper. On your first day, I told you that I'm allergic to beef," I said, eyeing the beef and potato stew on the dining table, anger bubbling inside me. The Collins women, did they really think they could take advantage of my kindness? They say pitiful people often have detestable traits. I initially sympathized with the Collins women's situation, having to deal with a gambling-addicted, alcoholic, abusive man. Little did I know that this mother-daughter duo was equally malicious in their intentions. Mrs. Collins was skilled in cooking, especially in medicinal cuisine. At first, out of jealousy, she tampered with my food, causing my health to deteriorate steadily. Later, she planned to use her daughter to seize my family's assets, poisoning me to death. Naturally, I couldn't keep such a person around. "To put it simply, you're fired," I said with a calm smile. Mrs. Collins stammered, "You dare fire me? Don't you know Yvette loves beef?" Previously, whenever there was an issue, Mrs. Collins would bring up Yvette, knowing I had feelings for her. She thought I would tolerate anything for Yvette's sake. I knew Yvette liked beef. Yes, she enjoyed sitting in upscale restaurants, pretending to elegantly cut her steak with a knife and fork, chewing small pieces at a time. She believed this was the hallmark of high society. And I, allergic to beef, was nothing more than a lucky, wealthy commoner in her eyes. She looked down on me. I was curious. Did she actually enjoy eating beef? Or was it just her inner inferiority complex, yearning for an upper-class lifestyle? "Your daughter's preferences are none of my concern," I said curtly, then called the butler to have her escorted out. After the security guards had thrown all of Mrs. Collins' belongings out, I felt an inexplicable sense of relief. At 8 o'clock that evening, having finished my homework, I received a call from Yvette. "Joe Smith, you've really disappointed me. How dare you fire my mum? I'm telling you, I never want to see you again." In the past, whenever she said she didn't want to see me or talk to me, I would panic. I'd even have physical reactions like shortness of breath. But now, hearing her say these words felt like a huge joke. Yvette, we're just classmates. Don't worry, I don't want to deal with you either, I said, ready to hang up. Joe Smith, you've won. Yvette gritted her teeth on the other end of the line. I'm outside your house. I order you to come out right now. I walked to the window and saw Yvette standing outside the gate under a streetlight, her backpack on and seemingly chewing gum. I'll accept your financial support and tutor you. Come out now. But I'll write you an IOU. I'll definitely pay you back later. Don't think you can humiliate me this way, and don't think you can win me over like this. Yvette's incessant chatter came through the phone, irritatingly loud. Disgusted, I hung up and blocked her number. After hanging up the phone, I called the security guard again, telling him to be vigilant and not let Yvette Collins sneak in. Oh, right. I need to inform the estate security that Mrs. Collins is no longer working at my house. From now on, this mother and daughter pair shouldn't be allowed into the estate. The poor and lowly don't deserve to see wealth and glory. Having arranged all this, I prepared for bed. In my previous life, at this age, I only had eyes for Yvette Collins. I was so besotted with her that I lost myself, ending up neither alive nor dead, and ultimately meeting a tragic end. On the day I married her, my heart was full of joy, excitement, and anticipation, yet she brought her toy boy to our wedding. When I objected, she said, "Joe Smith, are you really this petty? Or do you not trust me?" She then made as if to leave. Ha! How despicable that in my past life, I was such a lovesick fool. Thinking about my past life, I want to slap myself several times. The next morning, Yvette Collins intercepted me at the school gates. "Joe Smith, what's your game? All you know is how to use your money to manipulate me. What else can you do?" Yvette shouted. "You think this will make me give in?" The teacher said, "The noble man can't be corrupted by power or wealth." Listen to that, quite impressive, right? I looked at her face, twisted with anger and excitement, and smiled. If the noble can't be corrupted by power or wealth, why are you stopping me? Yvette Collins, don't be so cheap. Accosting a boy at the school gates early in the morning? You might not care, but I do. In the past, I would never have used such words to insult a girl. It didn't align with the upbringing I'd received since childhood. Yvette Collins probably never dreamed I would insult her like this. Her face immediately turned bright red. She had always cared about face. Before, when her mother worked as a housekeeper at my place, she resented me. Nearby, my good friend David Jackson called out to me, "Joe, have you had breakfast?" As he spoke, he handed me a box of scones, smiling. "My mum made scones. She especially wanted me to bring you a couple. Try them while they're hot." I deliberately said loudly, "Perfect. I haven't eaten yet. I fired my housekeeper yesterday." Really, a housekeeper putting on airs? If I didn't fire her, who would I fire? Yvette Collins's face turned pale with anger. She stammered, "You, Joe Smith, you just wait." I shrugged indifferently. I really couldn't understand where she got the courage to confront me, given her terrible family background. Moreover, I couldn't fathom why, given her awful circumstances, she wasn't grateful when I offered to help her. However, something that made me both laugh and cry happened next. In the afternoon, the troublemaker Bob Wilson cornered me in the school's small woods. Shaking his leg, he demanded I give him some money to spend. Otherwise, he'd loosen up my muscles and bones. He asked for £30,000 right off the bat. I didn't do much, after all, it was school. I just shouted loudly a few times, and other students came over. Then I went to find the headmaster. In my past life, although I was wealthy, I never bullied others using my power. In this life, naturally, I wouldn't do anything illegal either. But for small-time thugs like Bob Wilson, who consistently ranked at the bottom of the class and often got into fights at school, using my influence to get rid of him was just doing a public service. Yvette Collins, I don't know if she's genuinely stupid or just born with a savior complex. Or perhaps she believes that because she has good grades and is pretty, everyone will indulge her. She actually went to the headmaster to plead for Bob Wilson. As a result, the headmaster scolded her. Rumors spread around the school that she and Bob Wilson were having an affair, and students were pointing and whispering behind her back. Heaven knows, I wasn't the one who spread these rumors. A week later, a sleazy old man stopped me at the school gates. "Mr. Smith." The old man puffed on a cigarette, squinting as he looked me up and down. "What do you want?" I recognized him, Yvette Collins' gambling addict father. "I hear you fancy my daughter?" Mr. Collins got straight to the point, saying he'd arrange for me to have his daughter if I gave him some money. Not much, just £30,000 to start with. I'd been having people keep an eye on the Collins family. These past few days, Yvette and her mother had been having a rough time. Debt collectors were showing up at their door daily. Because of this, Mrs. Collins couldn't help but complain that Yvette was ungrateful for refusing my kindness. The mother and daughter had been arguing furiously at home. Upon learning that Yvette had refused my financial assistance, Mr. Collins had given her a savage beating. She couldn't even come to school today because of it. Then, he came to find me with this absurd idea of offering his daughter to me. He wanted £30,000 from me, not to pay off his gambling debts, but to place another big bet. "Mr. Collins, who do you think your daughter is? And who do you think I am? Offering her to me? You're really getting above yourself, aren't you?" I said deliberately. "Originally, I felt sorry for your daughter and wanted to help her out, like feeding scraps to a stray cat. But then your daughter told me she's capable and talented, and doesn't need my help. Mr. Collins, I think your daughter must have found some super rich sugar daddy, so she's not interested in the small change I'm offering." With that, I got into the car that had come to pick me up. By 10 that night, I was already in bed when my butler told me the Collins family was causing a scene outside. I stood at the window and looked out. Under the streetlight, Mr. Collins was holding a wooden stick, forcing Yvette to kneel at my front door. He was shouting that if I didn't open the door and see them, he'd beat his daughter to death right there. Talk about emotional blackmail. I found it utterly laughable. But I decided to go and see her, to watch her humiliation. I took my butler and 2 bodyguards, opened the door, and stood on the stone steps of the mansion, looking down at Yvette from on high. Thinking of my daughter's tragic death in my previous life, I couldn't hide my anger. I taunted, "Yvette Collins, I never thought I'd see you like this. Where's your pride now? Your backbone? If you've got any guts, don't kneel at my door." Yvette looked up and glared at me fiercely, her eyes full of hatred. Then, gritting her teeth, she said, "Joe Smith, are you satisfied now?" "Ha!" I laughed lightly. Satisfied? In this lifetime, I wouldn't be satisfied until Yvette Collins was dead. "You damn. Hurry up and kowtow to Mr. Smith to apologize." Mr. Collins slapped her on the head, making her stagger. In the past, if I'd seen her being hit like this, I would have felt terribly sorry for her. Now I just watched coldly. Yvette looked up at me, then bowed her head respectfully to apologize. I knew she must be giving herself a pep talk, telling herself she was enduring humiliation to achieve her goals. She might even be silently reciting to herself, "Heaven tests those it will raise to great things." Beside her, Mrs. Collins hurried over to me, saying, "Joe, look. Yvette knows she was wrong. She's just young and doesn't understand things. Don't hold it against her. If you give me the money now, I'll send Yvette over to tutor you tonight." I raised an eyebrow and looked at Mrs. Collins. "Mrs. Collins, do you think I need tutoring? Am I that hopeless?" Mrs. Collins was stunned for a moment, then seemed to come to her senses and hurriedly said, Oh, I misspoke. Let Yvette serve you, then." Beside her, Mr. Collins said directly, "Mr. Smith, as long as you lend me some money, this girl is yours." I smiled and walked over to Yvette, circling her. I could see her fists clenched in anger, yet she was powerless to do anything. Yes, just like me in my past life, when my soul couldn't rest after death. Watching my precious 3-year-old daughter being beaten and abused time and again, until she died tragically. I was powerless then too. Boundless rage consumed me. "Mr. Collins, I'll be honest. I was indeed interested in your daughter before. Young men's fancy, you know. Mr. Collins nodded eagerly, saying, "Yes, yes, of course. But why should I spend tens of thousands of pounds when I can have any woman I want?" I sneered. "Why bother with your daughter? She's neither fun nor accommodating." Mr. Collins hurriedly said, "Mr. Smith, you're mistaken. How can you compare my daughter to those women of the night?" I deliberately said, "I used to think she was different from those women, which is why I didn't mind spending some money to humor her, to tease her a bit." Hearing me say this, Yvette could no longer contain herself. She shouted, "Joe Smith, am I just a pet to you? Something for your amusement?" "Exactly." I nodded, looking at her with contempt. "What else? Did you think I loved you? Look at yourself. What are you?" Yvette's face turned redder than a beetroot with anger. She cursed, "Joe Smith, you really are that kind of person after all." "I am exactly that kind of person. Born into wealth and privilege, I can be ignorant and useless, yet still have piles of money every day, with drivers and bodyguards escorting me to school." I looked up and smiled. "I know you're jealous. Hating the rich is every poor person's duty. But I know you want to be someone like me even more. You hate that life is unfair. Why did you end up with parents like these?" "Mr. Collins, it's not like your daughter hasn't cursed you before." I shrugged, stirring up trouble again. Sure enough, Mr. Collins angrily kicked Yvette, but he immediately turned back to me with a fawning smile, saying, "Mr. Smith, this girl might be a bit fiery, but she's good-looking." Then he whispered to me conspiratorially that a bit of spice adds flavor. I truly couldn't imagine how such words could come from a father's mouth. I sneered and said, "Mr. Collins, I did fancy your daughter once, but everyone at school knows she's hooked up with some lowlife now. If I got together with her, what would that make me? I'd be the biggest mug in all of Cambridge. You'd better take your daughter and go home." Mr. Collins was stunned, and so was Mrs. Collins. Mrs. Collins knew that I used to like Yvette. She privately thought that Yvette and I had just had a row, a bit of a tiff. Her daughter had simply gone too far, pushed things a bit much. I was angry. Young lads, their brains aren't really brains at all, just hormones running wild. So she figured, if her daughter just apologized, said sorry, it wouldn't be a big deal. "Mr. Collins, that new son-in-law of yours seems quite capable. Why don't you ask him to sort out your gambling debts?" I said bluntly. Yvette suddenly rushed up to me and shouted, "Joe Smith, what rubbish are you talking? Everyone at school knows. If you hadn't spread those rumors." She was embarrassed, angry, and anxious. Her usually beautiful face was contorted, looking almost frighteningly grotesque. "Whether I spread rumors or not, you know the truth," I said. Mrs. Collins suddenly turned and slapped Yvette hard across the face, cursing, "You little tart. How could you do such a thing?" Yvette staggered from the blow, holding her swollen cheek. Suddenly, she turned and ran. Mrs. Collins hurried after her. "Hey, Mr. Collins," I called out. Mr. Collins stopped and looked at me. "Mr. Smith, are you planning to lend me some money?" "Mr. Collins, don't get your hopes up. You're nothing to me. Why should I lend you money?" I said with a smirk. "I was just going to point you in the right direction." "Oh." Hearing that I wasn't going to lend him money, Mr. Collins was visibly disappointed. Recently, he'd been beaten up several times by debt collectors, and he was nursing a lot of pent-up anger. To make matters worse, his daughter wasn't doing what he wanted. "I reckon your girl must have some money stashed away. Otherwise, with your family in such a state, debt collectors banging on your door every day, why would she refuse my offer of help? She even thought I was trying to humiliate her with money." I said, "Mr. Collins, you'd better wise up." I started a new round of stirring up trouble. In an instant, Mr. Collins' face turned ashen, looking extremely unpleasant. He had already been driven to desperation by the debt collectors, and now he learns that his daughter had refused financial help from a wealthy young man? How ridiculous! And that wasn't all. His useless wife couldn't even keep her job as a housekeeper, getting herself sacked by her employers. If his wife had no money, how was she supposed to support him? That's why he'd beat his daughter and wife when he was drunk, forcing them to find ways to get money. Yvette and her mother didn't know many other people, and the only wealthy person they seemed to know was me. I knew Yvette Collins would come to see me again. Sure enough, the next day was Saturday, and school was out. In the afternoon, the butler informed me that Yvette Collins had arrived. I thought for a moment and said, "Please show her to the study." Yvette Collins looked quite disheveled now, with a strand of hair missing. Half of her face was bruised, and she limped on her left leg, struggling to walk properly. It seemed she had been badly beaten yesterday. "Joe Smith, you did this on purpose, didn't you?" Yvette Collins said as she saw me sit down on the sofa and prepared to sit down herself. "Yvette Collins, stand up straight," I barked. "What do you think you are? This sofa is very expensive, and you're not worthy of sitting on it." The more she cared about her dignity, the more I wanted to destroy it from the ground up. Yvette Collins was furious. She said, "Do you really need to use this method to humiliate me before you're satisfied? Joe Smith, even if you get me through such despicable means, I will hate you for the rest of my life." I closed my eyes and counted from 1 to 10, then from 10 to 1. This helped me calm down. Since I came back to life, every time I saw Yvette Collins, I had the urge to strangle her, especially when she said these words. I loved her for so long, yet she thought my love brought her shame, and thus harbored hatred. Not only did she poison me, but she also abused our daughter to death. "Yvette Collins, do you think I want to obtain your filthy body?" My voice was cold. In my previous life, I had always held a high position and naturally spoke with authority. To my surprise, Yvette Collins began to undress in front of me. "Someone come here," I shouted. My butler immediately rushed in with others, and I had them escort Yvette Collins out. Once, I liked her coquettish face, but now, in my eyes, she was more disgusting than a rotting corpse. But what I never dreamed of was that, in the evening, videos of Yvette Collins running out of my house in disarray were all over the internet. Yvette Collins even wrote a short post, saying that I had invited her to my house under the pretext of tutoring. But I took the opportunity to violently molest her. She asked online what she should do. I instantly understood her true intention for coming to my house today. If I had actually done something to her, she would have run straight to the police station to report me for sexual assault. Then, when the police mediated, she could make exorbitant demands. But after I had the butler chase her out, she started cyberbullying me. My identity was exposed. The son of a billionaire, always in luxury cars, driven to school by a chauffeur, usually surrounded by bodyguards and assistants. Hating the rich is the duty of every poor person, and many people became indignant, selectively believing Yvette Collins' words and coming to insult me. By the next day, the matter had escalated to another level, trending on Twitter. The internet was full of "billionaire's son molests underage schoolgirl." Everyone said this bad behavior must be severely punished, and Yvette Collins should report it to the police. Yvette Collins cried on the internet, saying she only asked that I not harass her in the future, and she would give me a chance to mend my ways. "Joe Smith is still young. I don't want his life to be tainted," she wrote. "But I also hope he won't harass me anymore." Boo-hoo. Everyone praised her for being kind and magnanimous. By Sunday night, the online fervor had reached its peak, with many people donating money to Yvette Collins. Yvette Collins' identity was also exposed. The daughter of my housekeeper, with an alcoholic and gambling father who owed a mountain of debt. That's why she came to my house for tutoring. As a result, this spoiled rich kid, not only molested her but also beat her just because she wouldn't submit to me. A typical plot of an evil young master from a wealthy family oppressing an innocent white lotus. But many people believed it. Yvette Collins didn't report to the police. I did. At the same time, I also released the surveillance videos from my front door and study. I even bought promotions and found big internet celebrities to operate it. My short essay wasn't written by me, but by a famous Twitter influencer. I've seen this kind of thing many times before in my past life, and it's not difficult to orchestrate. Soon, public opinion reversed. Oh my God. She took off her clothes herself? This is so shameless. She was asked to study, but instead she went to strip and seduce someone, desperate to climb into the rich boy's bed. Do you really think Joe Smith would be interested in someone like her? Exactly, Joe Smith is from a wealthy family and he's handsome too. Of course, he wouldn't be interested in her. Joe Smith was originally planning to help her, but she thought he was insulting her? If you've got the guts, don't kneel at his doorstep. Exactly. Just because you can't get money, you can slander people like this? I suggest Joe Smith call the police. On Monday, when I went to school, I learned that Yvette Collins had been arrested. Since I had CCTV cameras at my front door and in my study, I also hired a lawyer. However, I don't intend to pursue this matter with Yvette Collins. Cyberbullying and false accusations won't keep her locked up for long. It's pointless. Leaving her outside to endure the beatings from her gambling addict father will allow her to create even more drama. My not pressing charges doesn't mean the school won't take action. Given that Yvette Collins first tried to seduce me by stripping in my house and failed, then falsely accused and cyberbullied me, the impact was extremely negative. So, the school decided to expel her. Yvette Collins broke down. With just over half a year left until the A-levels, she believed her grades were excellent and she was at the top of her class at school. She had even boasted that she would have her pick of the University of Cambridge or the University of Oxford, and even claimed she would be the top scorer in the county. Now, the school has expelled her. In other words, she's lost her chance to take the A-levels. So, she ran to the headmaster's office, crying, making a scene, kneeling, begging the headmaster to give her another chance. She said she was the top student in the school and had a chance to be the top scorer in the county for the A-levels. The headmaster laughed and told her that the school has a top student every year, and after she's gone, there will still be a top student. But the school doesn't want someone with poor character. The headmaster also said that if someone like her entered a top university and gained knowledge, she would only harm society. I thought the headmaster's words were spot on. No wonder he's the headmaster. When school let out, Yvette Collins blocked my way at the school gate. She still had her backpack on, but she no longer looked as confident as before. Her once pretty face was now full of gloom, with a dark aura around her brow. In the sunset, she looked somewhat terrifying. Before I could say anything, the school bully, who was preparing to hitch a ride with me, sneered, "Well, if it isn't Yvette Collins. What are you blocking our Joe for this time? Going to strip again? Why don't you take something off now? Let us have a look." It was dismissal time, and there were many people at the school gate. Everyone turned to watch the scene. Yvette Collins lunged towards me, her hand reaching for my face. My bodyguard blocked her. "Yvette, what are you doing?" I said sternly. "Joe Smith, are you satisfied now?" Yvette shouted at me furiously, "You used your power to force the school to expel me, ruining my chances for A-levels. You're a beast. You just wanted to use this method to humiliate me, right?" I shook my head, not even bothering to respond. In this life, she had lost her chance at A-levels. Her future prospects were bleak. I remained silent, but the students around us chimed in one after another, mocking her. Finally, unable to bear the verbal assault, she fled in disgrace. But her tragedy was just beginning. I had people keep an eye on the Collins family. I had no choice in my previous life. She was the one who got me killed. This time, I needed to be more careful, more cautious. After Yvette was expelled from school, Mrs. Collins was stunned. She had worked hard all her life, hoping her daughter would get into university and make something of herself. From a young age, she had been very strict with Yvette's upbringing. Now, with just over 6 months left until the A-levels, her daughter had been expelled from school. Due to the expulsion, they couldn't even transfer her to another school. Mrs. Collins, who had always doted on her daughter, gave Yvette a severe beating. That night, she came to my house, kneeling before me, begging me to forgive Yvette, reinstate her, and let her return to school. I told her that the school's decision to expel Yvette was not something I could influence. Moreover, Yvette had brought this upon herself. No one else was to blame. Then I had my assistant escort her out. Because of this incident, Yvette's status in the family plummeted. Originally, Mrs. Collins had hoped Yvette could curry favor with me, go to university, and bring honor to the family. Mr. Collins had also hoped she would get into university, earn money, and support him. They had always indulged her tantrums and moods. Now that their hopes were dashed, Yvette became the black sheep of the family. Mr. Collins had a pile of debts outside, and he actually suggested that Yvette should take out a loan using compromising photos as collateral. When the paparazzi told me this, I could hardly believe my ears. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. One night at midnight, the paparazzi suddenly called me. "Mr. Smith, something terrible has happened." "What is it?" I asked urgently. Given how unfairly I died in my previous life, I couldn't afford to be careless about anything related to Yvette now. "Mr. Collins has been killed. The old drunk would come home sloshed every day and beat his wife and daughter." The paparazzi told me that Yvette's life had become unbearable. Every day she was either being beaten or about to be beaten. Mr. Collins forced her to take out loans using compromising photos or work in pubs or nightclubs, selling her body. Yvette was too proud to do such things, so Mr. Collins kept beating her. The worst time, the paparazzi told me, Yvette was beaten so badly she soiled herself, so she contacted Bob Wilson. The paparazzi didn't know the details, but apparently, Bob stabbed Mr. Collins more than 10 times, each blow fatal. Now Bob had run away with Yvette, their whereabouts unknown. The police had launched a manhunt. Later, this case seemed to become a cold case. It wasn't until after I finished my A-levels that the police suddenly came to me, saying they needed to ask me a few questions about a case. That's when I learned that Bob had been caught at the border. He was involved in drug trafficking, human trafficking, and other crimes. According to his confession, he had been hiding out with Yvette, moving from place to place. When they ran out of money, he sold Yvette. Sold her? What happened to being her devoted admirer? In my previous life, he had made his fortune through Yvette. He had also done many dirty deeds for her. My poor little girl in that life was tortured to death by people he hired. In this life, he actually sold Yvette. Human nature truly can't withstand temptation. Bob, of course, couldn't escape the law. Drug trafficking is a serious crime, and with human trafficking added on top, he was sentenced to death directly. The police never found Yvette Collins. She gradually faded from my world. From university onwards, I became increasingly involved in my family's business. In the summer of my second year at Cambridge, I traveled to Southeast Asia with my assistant and bodyguard to negotiate a business deal. Our hosts were very hospitable and invited us to watch a local circus performance that evening. As the main act took the stage, even from a distance, I recognized her instantly. The woman with her limbs amputated and tongue cut out, yet still maintaining her beautiful face, enclosed in a glass case. It was unmistakably Yvette Collins. As the circular platform slowly rotated, Yvette, inside the glass case, clearly spotted me in the crowd. Then, she frantically thrashed her mutilated body against the glass, tears streaming down her face. I understood her body language. She was begging for help, but I stood up and left with my entourage, never looking back at her again. Afterwards, I discussed the beauty in a bottle act with the event organizer. He explained that these women were typically victims of human trafficking. They sought out beautiful, alluring faces. After amputating their limbs and providing basic wound treatment, they would be trained for a period before being put on stage with makeup. In reality, these women didn't survive long. Unable to move independently, they required assistance for eating and using the toilet. Moreover, without proper medical care, their wounds would fester and become infected. Surviving for 3 to 5 years was considered long, some only lasted a year or so. I listened, feeling deeply disturbed. As I boarded the plane to leave, I gazed at the floating white clouds and sighed softly. In a past life, Yvette had been my first love during my teenage years, a time of innocent and beautiful emotions. I had once respected and loved her, helping her escape from her toxic family environment. But she grew to hate me, tried to kill me, and tortured our daughter to death. In this life, I abandoned her, and she ended up mutilated and trapped in a glass case, enduring endless torment. It seemed as if everything had been predetermined by fate. In this life, she would never have the chance to attempt to take my life or seize my family's assets. I would have my own beautiful life,